Hi everyone, welcome back to Salty Tarot. We are going to do another short little reading and dive right in. Famous last words. This is the Alchemy deck, and it is definitely not for trifling with, not one to trifle with. It's also impossible to shuffle, and I love that. I really love how weird it is to shuffle this deck. So I figured it out. I can shuffle it like that, and as long as I line it up perfectly again, then it's not annoying to shuffle the second time. But if I let it get all wild, it kind of is. Which is only a problem because I get self-conscious shuffling on camera. So anyway, now I think I can do one of these. So, did not ask a question, but the question was going to be, the intended question was, what's going on in your connection / Actually, yeah, let's go with that. I wanted to take cards for your energy and your person's energy, but we're going to start with what's going on in the connection, since that's what I spoke into the space in that moment, and then we might do two more of these here cards. So these are both very aligned energies. They pull out just slightly different emphases, different nuances of the same Eros energy. They're both generative, fecund energies. So copper is associated with Venus, Aphrodite, who is the goddess of love. And I actually want to read out the description for this one. Spring is sort of more predictable in its meaning, but fertility, the womb, Venus. Copper was mined on Cyprus to make vessels and tools. This island is the same fertile ground of Aphrodite, the goddess associated with the planet Venus and the forces. Sorry, I'm just adjusting the microphone. The forces of... Okay, let's start that again. This island is the same fertile ground of Aphrodite, the goddess associated with the planet Venus and the forces of love, pleasure, and fertility. Such is the magic of copper. This golden-hued metal elicits delight and mystique, even a sense of awe. The copper card marks the arrival of Eros into the laboratory. That would be the laboratory of the alchemist. It is likely the alchemist has been hard at work for too long, prioritizing scholarly pursuits over sensual pleasure. Get ready for a shift of priorities, for an awakening of the heart and the life-generating centers of the body. In the true alchemical experiment, nothing is excluded or separate from the work. Bring sensuality into the fold and embrace it with reverence and curiosity. Aphrodite smiles upon you. And it's got little side notes. For example, in esoteric wisdom traditions, Venus and copper are associated with the kidneys. A letting go is likely required in order to embrace Eros with open arms. Though bright and warm when polished, copper quickly oxidates, turning green or blue. Discern if a metaphorical polishing up is in order. And then the spring card is, it's everything that you would associate with spring, but it's, I keep flipping past it. But the keywords are blossoming, becoming, the horizon. And so it says it's generation time. Ponder the flower within the bud. You may be dreaming up a business plan, humming a new melody, or flirting with a special someone. And so it's sort of that energy of pushing through, creating something new. And then it's sort of, these two cards together tell me that there's something perhaps new starting in your life or a new phase within an existing connection. And it's springtime energies. It's fertile. It's like, you know, when the lambs are jumping all over the place, just being crazy fools. And, you know, people are going off and fertilizing the fields, shall we say, for the celebration of Beltane. And, yeah, it's very... just that energy that it takes the plant to push up out of the ground after winter, you know, that sort of pushing forth energy, like, yeah, okay. I do distract myself rather well. Anyway, if that's resonating, then let's continue on. So I wanted to get cards for, let's continue on. We'll just leave those where they are. Am I recording? Great. Okay, so what energy is your person in? The person in your heart or on your mind? Whatever chamber you'd like to hold them in. your person's in the energy of the sun. And what energy are you in? What is your energy at this time? Yay. I do want one to just flip out. I don't want to pull. Even though the energy of the string is about making things happen, isn't it? Not necessarily. It's that beginning energy, that cardinal pushing forth, the leadership energy. That is what the spring is to the winter. The winter is, you know, there's lots happening under the ground, under the surface in winter. And that is what creates that pent-up energy that bursts through in the spring. Ooh, we've got Chiron. Chiron is about healing. So it's very cool that the sun is what came through. The sun is the first card of this deck, the condition of possibility for all life on Earth. It is the originating seed energy. It is what allows spring to happen, not just by its rotations and its cycles, but by its essence, its beingness, I want to say. Its vitality, its presence, its magnetism. And today, as I record this, it is the summer solstice. So I've just actually come from a meditation on the sun and a sound bath, all focused on the sun. And that as I was lying there, absorbing the sounds, the tones of the crystal bowls, I was reflecting on, I'd said something about the moon being cyclical in an earlier reading earlier this morning. And I was thinking, and I described the sun as constant. The sun's not constant. The sun is, relative to us, always on the move. A woman in this workshop described how she swims every morning in the ocean. And the bay that she swims in, you know, at some times of the year, the sun's over there. And right now it's all the way over there. And she knows it's about to go back to that spot. And she was marveling just at, you know, just how palpable nature is and how cyclical nature is and how we're such an integrated part of that, which is really easy to feel if you live in a place where you can, for example, go swimming in a bay every morning in the ocean. I do live in a pretty beautiful place for connecting with nature, and we like to keep that a secret. Shh, don't tell. It is a very salty island where I live. And in any event, I was thinking about how the sun is cyclical and how in the Middle Ages, these days we have this idea that, and to use gendered terms that once again I find problematic, but are a good shorthand. So we have this description of men as being the changeable ones, the inconstant ones, the ones who are flighty and are always on to the next thing. In the Middle Ages, in Chaucerian times, it was the reverse. Women were associated with the moon and were considered changeable. Women were the ones who were always flitting off to the next thing. You could never rely on a woman to be faithful. That was just not what women were or were for or were built for. And men were the reliable, constant, you know, steady presences. Men were reasonable and rational. And I'm not saying they actually were. I'm saying that was the stereotype. And I just love the history of thought. I especially love, it's not just the history of thought. What I love is the history of bias. I love seeing how biases shift over time. And so right now we're in this era where, you know, women are the ones reputed to want commitment and constancy. And it's, you know, it's just the complete opposite of the image that Western culture had of, European culture had of women through, you know, several hundred, 1,000 years at least, if not longer, before the industrial age. So anyway, your person is coming through as the sun, so they might be in those, I'm going to avoid the problematic words, they're in dynamic, active energies. They're coming through as present, magnetic, just like that starting energy, that cardinal energy. You know, the sun is the condition of possibility for, I said that already probably, but the sun is what makes the spring, and not just by having this longer cycle. So it is cyclical as well, right? It just has a much longer cycle relative to the earth than the moon does. But we do see it. We see it shifting. It's just you have to hold out for those shifts of the sun. You have to really dig in and be patient and, build your sacred structure on the solstice so that, or at least plan it on the solstice so that when the sun comes around to that exact spot again, that shaft of light will illuminate your sacred statue. And you have to wait a whole other year before you can see if you lined it up properly. And then you're coming through as Chiron. Chiron is the wounded healer. Chiron is paradox. It's betweenness, between energy. Chiron is that alchemical magic where you take your own wounds and you transform them into something to benefit humanity, something to benefit yourself, and then something to benefit humanity. So, for example, you might take whatever that deepest wound is that you have and turn that into a lucrative career. And so if you're still sitting with your wounds, then Chiron, coming through as Chiron, might feel like a negative thing. Chiron is in fact incredibly transformational energy. It's where you transmute your pain into goodness, into beneficence, into benefit for yourself and for others. And I notice, the sun is just present, right? It's like the hand facing outwards. And everything about this card is sort of outward directed. And Chiron here, just because of the way I laid them out, it's facing the sun. So it might be that you might be lending some of your energy to the sun person at this time. You might be in a role of maybe supporting their growth, their magnetism, maybe you're sort of protecting them with your aura. Maybe they've got, they're sort of riding in your energies and they're lit up by it. And, and you, on the other hand, might be conscious of the wounding that has allowed for you to be beaming those energies forth. And your sun person is just having the luck of being in those energies. Like you can see it's even the same colors. It's like this beam is continuing. I did not plan that. I just set them out. I was like, oh, this one goes here because this fits. And then I just was like, oh, this one I'm going to put it here. Did not think about it whatsoever, but it's very much like this beam is like the beam of the sun card. So that's cool. If the sun is the condition of possibility for the spring and Eros, I would say this Chiron, the way that it's laid out here, is the condition of possibility for the sun. So it's sort of like those secret, maybe wintry energies, like I was saying. Spring can't be spring. Spring can't spring without winter wintering. And, the way these cards are laid out, it's like your sun person can't sun without you Chironing. I don't know, words are getting awkward, but let's move on. How can you best support the connection at this time? I'm taking a positive framing. I've been reflecting on how I sometimes frame things in not a negative way or a lack necessarily, but picking out the thing that I would fix or change, which I think we do as humans a lot. But I've been invited in a couple of ceremonies this weekend to reflect on so for example, if you're clearing things out, then you want to bring something in to fill that space. Because if you don't fill the space, something will fill the space. So it's actually important to, when you're doing energetic clearing work, to protect that space in some way or to fill it with something positive. And so I've been thinking about how, with our words, I've had some conversations recently about, just sort of selling oneself short. I think a lot of us do that. Like if you sort of, I do it with these tarot readings all the time. Like if you denigrate yourself, there's self-denigration that is like self-deprecation and it can be entertaining. But if it's for a sort of self-conscious purpose rather than a humorous purpose. So yeah, and then sometimes we just kind of throw ourselves under the bus. We throw our own selves under the bus and say, oh, well, I think I don't have enough for this particular task. I did my best, but in the end, I'm not sure I've got enough, or I'm not sure I did it, quite, or I wish I'd done it just a little bit better than I did. And it's like you are structuring the other person's opinion of you by underselling yourself. I don't know. It's just a conversation I've been having lately. I've had it a few times over the last few days. So, like there are some people who just go forth and they say, I'm wonderful, and here's all the reasons I'm wonderful. And then there are other people who go forth and they're like, yeah, you're right, I did this wonderful thing, but it could have been better if I'd done this. That kind of thing. So maybe that's the Chiron Sun distinction that's coming through. Like maybe your person is just in their energies, and you, on the other hand, are sort of, maybe you're second guessing yourself a little bit. So I guess one thing that could support the connection that's coming through is to maybe, I don't want to tell you to be more sunny or to not, be in those Chiron energies. Those Chiron energies are powerful, and they're a blessing for all of humanity, all of the earth, all beings. But what can you do to support this connection? Let's let the tarot answer that. And I think it's helpful for us all to be mindful of where we sell ourselves short. Ten of Swords and Ace of Swords in reverse. So this card is obviously pulling forth the sort of mental anxiety of the Ten of Swords, which is usually associated with the Nine of Swords. The Ten of Swords is sort of like the worst has happened. And yeah, I think that's the meaning here. So she's had to have all those needles in order to get her hair into this fantastical form. That is great hair, but must have hurt. Bottom of the deck, we've got the Five of Swords. So these are all swords cards coming through. So we've got back of the deck energies is the Five of Swords in reverse. We've got Ace of Swords in reverse. We've got Ten of Swords. Swords are mental energy. They are communication. They are integrity. In reverse, the Ace of Swords would be a lack of clarity. Typically, the Five of Swords is usually about, in the upright, refers to that sort of, in a relationship context, I would interpret it as sort of like that, it's that desire to win at all costs in an argument. And it's sort of like when the civility gets dropped and it's really hard to recover from that place. So it's sort of like, you get into like name calling, just disrespectful behavior. And once you've gone to that place, it's really hard to not go to that place the next time you have an argument with someone or a disagreement. It's sort of like crossing that threshold over into disrespectful behavior. And, while we can still stop ourselves from going to that disrespectful place with other people, for some reason it's with family that we end up dropping that veneer and, sort of letting the monster come out. And the monster wants to win. The monster doesn't care about the other person's feelings, doesn't care, about, it's almost like you can see yourself going down that slide and you can't stop it. That's sort of the Five of Swords to my mind in a relationship. You can, of course, stop it, but, in that heated moment, sometimes it feels like we can't. And once you've gone there, it's really hard to recover. And so it looks as if that moment has occurred here, but you've come out of that moment, or the connection has come out of that moment. That moment is no longer happening now. Instead, what we have is this Ten of Swords card for me is calling forth the distinction between pain and suffering, which I learned through Indian Buddhism, through the Vipassana path. So pain, of course, is that moment, we know what pain is. We feel it in our body. It's visceral, it's difficult, It's that moment where, she's got the pins in her hair is being arranged and it hurts. And then the pins, the Ten of Swords is the card of the worst is over. So the pins are pulled out and she's no longer in physical pain, but she's still suffering because she still has the memory, that lingering feeling of the pain, that lingering anguish that goes along with the pain. And so that's the distinction between pain and suffering. And if you are in the moment, your pain is over. But if you are living in the past, it's like you're clinging to that moment, that past moment of pain. And that is suffering. Suffering is the narrative of your pain. Suffering is the story you tell yourself about your pain. Suffering is the way you explain a painful moment to other people. And it's like you're back in that painful moment when you're retelling the story, except that you're not. You're actually not. You're not being fidelitous to the present moment in which that pain is not actually occurring in this moment. So, there's sort of a call to immediacy, I would say, in that distinction, and possibly in this card. But, so it's as if the pain happened, the pain is no longer happening, that's in the background, but there's this lingering suffering around the pain, and that lingering suffering is causing confusion, possibly some anguish, like some befuddlement. So I'd say what you can do to support the connection is perhaps in that chironic way to transmute that pain, that suffering, into something more productive, to sort of be present in the moment, acknowledge to yourself what the present circumstances are. If you're feeling pain in the present moment, then of course, be with your pain. But if you can make that distinction between pain and suffering, ascertain what is pain and past and what is suffering, and is sort of like a lingering attachment to the past pain. If you can identify that and just put that little bit of a gap between you now in your present moment and that past moment of pain, then it's almost like you're disempowering the suffering. The suffering can't sting the way that it did a moment ago, just by putting that tiny little gap in between. And so that looks like productive work for you to do. That's also that moment of chironic transmutation where you can turn that pain or suffering into something that is productive, going out into the world and helping others. And so it might be that, maybe your pain has to do with your funky hairstyle, and maybe you realize all of a sudden that there's a better way to do it, and you can go forth and create amazing hair without that same level of pain and suffering, so you're going out into, that's obviously a metaphor, fairly trite one at that, but maybe that is maybe your soul's passion is to create less painful, more fabulous hairstyles. And if that is your soul's passion, then that is your gift to humanity. It is a gift to humanity. And fantastic, go to you. And so I would say just sort of bringing a little bit of allowing that breakthrough and just not identifying with the past pain would be what you can best do to support the connection at this time. How is your person seeing your connection at this time? Got Ace of Cups in reverse. Clarify Ace of Cups in reverse, please. We have Five of Pentacles, Five of Cups in reverse, and the Five of Swords in reverse just came out again. I did tuck it right into the middle of the deck, so I think that was meant to come out. On the bottom of the deck, we've got the Emperor. Where can you go? So your person is feeling like love has been lost, and it's giving them a feeling of being on the outside, of, being excluded from your affection. Yeah, specifically I'm seeing that they're feeling left out of your good graces. but they're moving into an energy of acceptance and they don't want to fight anymore. And they're trying really hard to exert some discipline over keeping away from arguments, strife, just they're trying really hard not to be in those energies of conflict with you. What is the best possible outcome? I think we're going to take that. Let's get one more. Best possible outcome, projecting forward from this point. Back of the deck, we've got the Wheel of Fortune. So the wheel's turning. You've been through the Ten of Swords moment. And at this time, there's an energy of, there's satisfaction as a result of staying in a comfort zone. And it looks like perhaps the work is not being done. So whatever the prompt to sort of evolve forward in the connection is, it's not happening right now. So the best possible outcome at this point is there's a degree of satisfaction, but it's a very independent satisfaction. And there's this energy of staying in the comfort zone, not taking a risk, not facing the energy of judgment that has the potential to, transmute that pain into something more productive or something more fruitful. There's an energy here of being very satisfied with staying in the comfort zone. So this suggests to me that there is work that could be done in the connection, but it's like there's an attachment to just sort of maintaining the peace right now. And that peace is quite satisfactory, but it's like there's deeper work that is not being done at this time. That sort of calling to account is not happening, which means that this peace is just a comfort zone, if that makes sense. It's not a long-lasting, sustainable, peace that has been wrought from getting honest, getting raw, getting authentic about feelings. It's just sort of a surface piece that comes from avoiding dealing with the actual issues. But in the back of the deck, we've got the Wheel of Fortune. So, things are transforming, things are shifting. So it might be that there's just sort of like a holding pattern right now. But there does look like there's some potential for the wheel to turn. So the worst is over. Right now it's sort of like walking on eggshells, but I see potential for that to come to some fruition. So we've got, under the Wheel of Fortune, we've got the Knight of Pentacles in reverse, which is sort of like the slowest of the slow energies. But then we've got the Empress, King of Swords, so that clarity is coming through eventually. The Empress, of course, is just really gorgeous energies of fertility, fecundity, fruition, flow. So, it might be that there's a very, very imperceptible, slow turning of these gears, but there is this background energy of clarity and coming to a better place in the connection, coming even to a very positive, healthy place. But it's there's just right now you're in this sort of limbo situation of, one or both of you is just wanting to sort of keep the peace and not get too deeply into the actual issues. But it looks like you will, and you'll get some clarity, and things will be coming up roses. So, my friends, I'm going to leave it there. I hope that was helpful. And please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. That is the ultimate goal here. That enables the videos to be seen by more people and grow the channel, and hopefully help some people through difficulties in their lives or in their day. And so thank you so much for your trust in allowing me to read for you, and We shall see you in the next reading. Bye.